Hello, horror lovers. Welcome to the chilling world of Mr. Haunt. Please subscribe. It's our biggest motivation to keep bringing you spine-tingling stories. Let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Now, let's get into the stories. They say, memory is unreliable, that trauma twists the facts. I've always thought that was a convenient excuse for people who couldn't handle what really happened. But I remember everything. My name is Wade Coleman. I'm 36. I've lived in southern Michigan all my life. Spent most of my 20s on the road, indie band, sketchy gigs, worse motels. But I came home when my brother died. Took over his house outside Buchanan. That was 5 years ago. I never believed in monsters. Not ghosts. Not aliens. Definitely not those Dogman stories you hear up north. The Michigan werewolf stuff people joke about around bonfires. Until 2 winters ago, on Garber Road, it started with the tracks. January 18th, 2023. There'd been a heavy snow the night before. Thick, wet flakes that turned the whole countryside into a white tomb. I was shoveling my driveway when I saw them. Tracks leading from the woods behind my property, straight across the backyard. Not deer, not coyote, not even bear. These were huge, deep impressions, each about the size of a dinner plate. 5 toes. Almost human, but elongated. And the stride was massive. 8, maybe 9 feet between each step. They led straight to my garage door and stopped. Not turned back, not looped around, just stopped, like whatever made them had vanished into thin air. I called my neighbor, Donnie, Vietnam vet, hard man, believed in nothing but his dog and his shotgun. He took one look at the tracks, spat chew onto the snow, and muttered, "It's back." When I asked what he meant, he wouldn't say, just told me to keep my doors locked and to listen before I opened them. The next night, I heard it, not footsteps, not knocking, breathing, heavy, rhythmic, just outside my bedroom window. It was 2:14, a.m. I remember the exact time because I was watching the digital clock, trying to convince myself it was the wind. But it wasn't the wind. It stayed for nearly 10 minutes. Didn't move, didn't growl, just breathed. When I finally worked up the courage to pull back the curtain, there was nothing there. But the snow was disturbed. Not footprints, just 2 long drag marks, like something crawling on its belly. That was when the dreams started. I'd wake up screaming, sheets soaked, throat raw. Always the same vision, me standing in my backyard, unable to move, while something black and tall with glowing eyes circled just beyond the tree line. Except it wasn't circling me. It was studying, learning, like it was waiting for something. 3 days later, I saw it, not in the woods, on the roof. I'd just come home from a late shift at the repair shop. Pulled into the driveway, headlights sweeping across the front yard, and then, bang, a shape dropped from the roof to the ground. Too fast to follow, too heavy to be anything natural. I killed the engine, sat frozen, then it stepped into the headlights. 7 feet tall, hunched forward, thick black fur, matted with snow, muscles rippling under skin that looked too tight, hands, not paws, with claws that curved like hooks, legs bent backward like a dog's, but thicker, and the eyes, pale yellow, not glowing, not like movie monsters, but reflective, intelligent, angry. It didn't charge, it didn't snarl, it smiled, just curled its black lips back, revealing teeth that didn't belong in any animal on this earth. More human than wolf, broad, blunt, chewing teeth. Then it vanished. No howl, no sound, gone, gone. I didn't sleep that night, didn't sleep the next either. I nailed boards over the windows, put motion lights all around the property, bought a gun, shotgun, 12 gauge. I'm not a paranoid guy, but whatever this was, it wasn't some cryptid chasing campers, it was hunting me. Donnie came over after a few days. He'd seen it too, only once. 40 years ago. He was 13. Said it dragged off his uncle's German Shepherd during a camping trip. They found the dog's body 3 days later, 20 feet up in a tree, skinned. Donnie said it comes back every few decades. When it's hungry. When it finds someone who sees it. He told me to leave, sell the house, burn it if I had to. I didn't. I should have. On February 2nd, it escalated. I woke to the sound of scraping, not at the window, above me. I crept into the hallway, shotgun in hand, looked up through the attic hatch. The scraping was slow, rhythmic, like claws on wood. Then silence. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it, until the hatch exploded open and something howled down at me. Not a wolf sound, not even a dog, something that mimicked a man screaming. I fired blind. Whatever it was dropped back into the attic. I didn't wait. Grabbed my keys, drove to a motel in 3 Rivers. Didn't go back for 3 days. When I finally did, the boards on the windows were inside, ripped off and stacked in the living room. My bedroom mirror was shattered, and the word "run" was carved into the headboard 3 times. They say dogs can sense evil. I used to believe that, once. Before I moved to Duskin Hollow, my name is Joni Marks. I'm a veterinary technician, born and raised in Pittsburgh. In 2021, I took a job transfer to a tiny, rural clinic in southern Kentucky, deep holler country, where even GPS gives up halfway up the mountain roads. I wanted peace, a slower pace, somewhere quiet to deal with the fallout of a wrecked engagement and my dad's death. The town I landed in was Duskin Hollow. Population 312. 1 gas station, 1 diner, no streetlights, and not a single dog in sight. It wasn't something I noticed at first. I mean, it's the country. You expect animals, sure, but you don't count them until you start working in veterinary medicine and realize you haven't seen one single patient that barks. Cats, plenty. Cattle, every week, but dogs, nothing. When I asked Jeanette, the receptionist, about it, she just gave me a tight-lipped smile and said, "People around here don't keep dogs." That was it. No explanation, no joke, just finality. I should have taken that as a warning. It was my 3rd week when I saw one. Not a pet, not a stray. It was standing at the edge of the tree line across from my rental cabin. Something massive, upright, and wrong. I had just stepped onto the porch with a mug of tea. It was dusk, the sun barely hanging on the horizon. I spotted movement in the pines and froze. 2 yellow points glowed from the dark, low to the ground, but too wide apart to be any normal animal. And then it stood, not rose, stood, like it had always been. Broad shoulders, long arms that ended in crooked claw-tipped hands, fur matted in streaks of gray and black. Its head was wrong, long muzzle like a wolf's, but with a jaw that opened too wide. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just watched me. Then it vanished, not into the trees, just gone. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't sleep either, and the next morning, I found claw marks on the side of my car, deep, precise, like something had tested the metal for weakness. 2 nights later, I heard it low growl, right beneath my bedroom window. When I peeked out, the glass fogged over instantly, like a breath had touched it from the outside. But there was no heat, no sound. I stood there for 10 minutes, frozen, and then I heard a whisper, soft, rasping. "Impossible. Don't bring them here." The whisper haunted me. Don't bring them here. I hadn't brought anything. Not a dog, not a stray, not even a photo of my old mutt, Jasper, who'd passed the previous fall. I thought maybe it was stress, or trauma, or maybe I was just starting to lose it. But when I mentioned the voice to Jeanette at the clinic, she stiffened, like I'd slapped her. You heard it? She asked, voice barely audible. I nodded. She didn't say another word, just stood up, walked to the back office, and didn't return for the rest of the day. That night, I left the porch light on, left the TV running. I even took my dad's old Smith & Wesson from my lockbox and kept it on the nightstand. I'd never fired it. It was more sentimental than practical, but I felt naked without it. At 3:19 a.m., I woke to barking. One long, desperate bark, far off in the woods. Then another, closer, then silence. Dead silence. My heart was racing. There hadn't been a single bark in Duskin Hollow the entire 3 weeks I'd been there. That night, I heard two. But that silence afterward felt worse. Like whatever had barked, had been found, and shut up for good. I drove into town the next morning. Everything was off. Not closed, not panicked, just tight. No one met my eyes. No one said hello. At the diner, Hazel, the waitress who normally greeted me with smiles and bottomless coffee, walked over, set a cup down in front of me without a word, and slipped a folded piece of paper under the saucer. She didn't wait for me to read it. She didn't even stay in the room. I opened it when I got back to the car. If you want answers, go see Old Man Greeley, cabin east of Miller's Hill. Don't go after dark. There was a smear of what looked like ash on the corner of the note, and something that looked almost like a paw print. Almost. I found Greeley's cabin around noon. Half-rotted porch, no windows, smoke rising from a rusted chimney. I didn't knock. There wasn't a door. He was inside, sharpening a blade, the length of my forearm, sitting on a stool next to a wall, covered in bones. Not trophies. Not art. Warnings. Some were nailed in a circle. Others were strung up on twine, rattling softly with every breeze like wind chimes from hell. You saw it, he said before I even opened my mouth. Yeah, I said. I think so. You hear? It talk. I nodded. Greeley sighed. That means it picked you. Picked me for what? He didn't answer right away. Just spat into the fire and looked at the ceiling. Duskin made a deal. Long time ago. We don't keep dogs. We don't let dogs bark. We don't draw them. Not with howling. Not with whining. Not even pictures. You bring the sound of a dog into these woods, and it hears you. What is it? I asked. Greeley finally looked at me. It's not a werewolf. Not some lab experiment or forest spirit. It's older than this town. Maybe older than people. And it hates dogs. I thought about the whisper. Don't bring them here. What happens if someone does? I asked. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I saw the answer in the bones. When I got home, I checked my voicemail. 3 missed calls from the clinic. 1. From Jeanette. Her voice was shaking. Joni, don't come to work tomorrow. Don't even come into town. There was an accident. A guy from out of state. He brought his shepherd in. Said the dog started shaking in the truck as soon as they hit county lines. It's gone. The dog's gone. Joni, it just disappeared. And the man's truck, it's still running. With the door open and blood inside. They're going to say it was wolves. But we don't have wolves here. Please, get out. That night, the lights went out. Every bulb in the cabin burst within 5 minutes of each other. Even the porch lamp, which was solar. Something scraped along the walls. Not claws, nails, like fingers. Then, a knock, 3 times, deliberate, human. I stood at the door, gun in hand, afraid to even breathe. Then came the voice. She barked once. We took her tongue. You barked twice. Now we take yours. I blacked out. Or maybe I chose to forget. I woke up on the floor with blood on my pillow, my throat raw, tongue swollen, but intact. I packed what I could and drove out of Duskin Hollow. Before dawn. Didn't stop. Didn't say goodbye. The sun hadn't even cleared the hills when I crossed the county line, and the first thing I heard on the radio, a dog barking. I sobbed. I don't live in Kentucky anymore. I don't even live near forests. I keep my windows sealed, my doors locked, and I don't talk about dogs. Not in writing, not in photos, not even out loud, because sometimes, at night, when the city is quiet, I hear a knock 3 times, and then a voice. We never said you could leave. I didn't think it could follow me. That's what I told myself. Anyway, Duskin Hollow was its territory. That's what Greeley said. The rules were geographic, weren't they? But at WASN single quotes, don't not really. If the thing could choose you. 3 months after I left Kentucky, I'd rebuilt my life, or tried. I moved back to Pennsylvania, rented a 3rd-floor apartment in Scranton, and got a position at a small but busy veterinary hospital. Normal patients, real dogs, happy barking, panting dogs. But I couldn't get attached. Anytime I started to bond with one, it would whimper when I came near, hide behind its owner, growl low and confused. One even urinated on the floor when I walked into the room. That dog's eyes followed me all the way out the door, and when I looked into them, I swear I saw something like pity, or fear. That was when I started hearing the knocks again at first. Just creaks in the old building. Pipes, radiators, things I could dismiss, until it was 3 distinct knocks. At 3:19 a.m., once a week. Always the same time, always the same pattern. I tried everything, salt on the windows, steel over the door. A priest friend of my mother's, Father Kellen, blessed the apartment with oil and whispered Hail Marys. In every corner, it didn't help, because it wasn't religious, it was personal. One night, I left my apartment and drove, aimlessly, trying to outpace it. I ended up 2 towns over, parked in the lot of A24. Our laundromat with a bag of cold fries in my lap and a twitch in my eye from lack of sleep. That's when I saw her, a woman, mid-50s, maybe older, walking, a small terrier past the building. The dog froze when it passed near my car. Its entire body went rigid. Then it screamed, not barked. Screamed, like something primal and terrified. The leash slipped from the woman's hand, and the dog bolted. I jumped out, but she grabbed my arm before I could run after it. She said it followed you here. Her voice shook, but her eyes were clear, hard. How do you? Because I heard the knocks, too. In 98. But I didn't listen. My sister, she barked back. That phrase hit me like ice in the spine. Barked back. Mocked it, the woman said. Made growling sounds. Even got a Doberman, thinking she'd fight it off. What happened to her? I asked. The woman didn't answer, but I noticed now that her other hand, tucked in her coat pocket, had no fingers. That was when I decided to go back to Duskin Hollow. Not to make peace, but to find Greeley again, because I was tired of running, and something told me, it never stops unless you end it. When I returned, the road was blocked, not by police, not construction, just trees. Collapsed across the road like they'd fallen naturally, except every single trunk was cut clean. No saw marks, just missing. Like something took a bite out of the forest. I walked the last 4 miles. The town wasn't the same. Most houses were empty. Some looked burned. The clinic was boarded up. The diner's windows shattered. And above all, there were no sounds. Not birds, not insects, not even the wind. Just a crushing stillness, like the world itself was holding its breath. Greeley's cabin was half gone. Roof collapsed, door off the hinges. But the bones were still there. Only now, they were fresh. I walked through the debris and found a shape nailed to the back wall, roughly human, arms spread, legs crooked. But the head was canine, not a mask, not taxidermy, a real head twisted in agony. In its mouth was a folded note. I pulled it free. The paper was wet, smelled like copper and pine. Scrawled in Greeley's hand, "You don't kill IT, you replace IT." I don't remember how long I stood there, but by the time I turned around, the sun was setting. And I wasn't alone. It was in the doorway, taller than before. Its eyes didn't glow, they watched, and its hands. They were human this time, my hands. It raised one, and knocked once, twice, 3 times. Then it opened its jaw, and spoke. There must always be a hollow, and it must always be quiet. I screamed until my throat tore, and it smiled. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember driving. I just remember waking up in my apartment with dirt under my nails, pine needles in my shoes, and blood on my shirt. That night, I heard a dog bark outside my window, a real one, and I knew what I had to do. I live back in Duskin Hollow now. The clinic is open again. The town's repopulating. They even have dogs. Again, I make sure they don't bark. They know not to, because they know me now. They smell it on me. What I became. I didn't kill the Dogman. Didn't escape him. I replaced him. There's a price to keeping the hollow. Safe. Silence. And someone to make sure the barking never returns. So, I knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. And if you answer, God help you if you brought your dog. May 1926, Duskin Hollow, Kentucky. My name was Margaret Elliton, and back then, Duskin Hollow was a place you whispered about. Not because it was cursed or haunted. No, those ideas came later. At the time, we whispered because of who lived there, and what they'd done. It started with the dogs. Always the dogs. They say every town has one. An old widow or backwoods recluse who keeps too many mutts, names them like children, talks to them like they're human. In our hollow, that was old Claymore. Duskin, son of the town's founder, lived in the manor just beyond the cedar line, where the fog never lifted and the birds never flew. He had dozens, hounds mostly, big ones, they say. You could hear them howling across the valley every full moon like a funeral chorus. But then one year they stopped. Not gradually. Overnight. No more barking, no more prints in the mud, no more flashes of eyes between trees. Just silence. The first time I noticed, I was walking past the mill with my younger brother Joseph. He paused, frowned. "Something's wrong," he said. We were 10. I laughed. "You scared of ghosts?" "No," he said. "I'm scared of when things get quiet." 2 weeks later, the first disappearance happened. A farmhand named Glenn was found dead in the woods just past the cedar break. No blood, no wounds, just dead. But his face, it was twisted, mouth open like he'd died screaming. They buried him. Fast. No funeral. And the next morning, Claymore Duskin appeared in town for the first time in decades. He went straight to the chapel, spoke to Father Elmer behind closed doors for 2 hours, then vanished into the trees again. That night, 3 dogs were heard barking on Grange Hill. By morning, they were gone. I didn't understand it at first. I was too young, but I watched. I listened. I noticed how no one owned dogs anymore. Not in town, not in the farms, not even strays. If a dog showed up, it disappeared by nightfall. People whispered. It was wild animals, but no one saw anything. No blood, no tracks, just silence. And those knocks, 3, exactly, always on wood, never metal. No one admitted to hearing them, but everyone locked their doors tighter every fall. One evening, I asked my grandmother why she didn't let our old mutt, Kip, outside after dark. She leaned close, whispered in my ear, "Because Claymore made a deal." With who? Not who. What? I dug into it as I got older. In the church's records, I found one entry, dated March 3rd, 1901, written by Father Elmer himself. Claymore came again, this time with a proposal. The hounds won't listen anymore, he said. They see it in the trees. They bark at the wrong thing. And now it watches. He begged me to help him. Said he would trade anything to make it leave. I warned him. What he bargains with will be binding. But he insisted. He offered the one thing he loved, his dogs. The next entry, March 7th, 1901. Silence, at last. But Claymore's eyes are no longer his. He watches the woods now. He watches for it. By 1930, Claymore had vanished. Some said he died. Some said he walked into the forest and never came back. Others said he was still out there, watching, waiting, not for the creature, but for his replacement. Over the next century, it happened again. Every 27 years, someone would hear the knocks. Someone would hear the voice, and someone would stay, become the new watcher, the new enforcer, the one to keep the hollow silent. So when Joni, decades later, took up the role, it wasn't a curse. It was a tradition, one that started with a man who loved his dogs too much, and gave them up to save a town that would never love him back. Joni wasn't the first. She won't be the last. And if you ever hear dogs barking in Duskin Hollow, run, because someone's broken the silence, and the hollow must be kept quiet. Always case file, Duskin Hollow, Kentucky, compiled by Alexandra Vaught. Investigative journalist, freelance date, August 14, 2022. Subject, the Joni Weller incident, the Duskin silence phenomenon. TP1. 0 hours, 1 minute and 35 seconds interview with Leon Rucker, 72, local mechanic, lifelong resident of Duskin Hollow. Me. Can you describe what happened the night the dogs disappeared? Leon. Which time? Me. The most recent, 2019. After Joni Weller went missing. Leon. They didn't disappear. They shut up. Big difference to me. You mean they stopped barking? Leon. Yeah. All of them, in one night. You don't know how weird that is until you've heard dogs your whole life. Then suddenly it's like someone hit mute on the whole town. Me. And Joni. Leon. She heard the knocks. Always starts with the knocks. Me. Can you be specific? Leon. Nope. Long pause. Leon. I like you, miss. You talk calm. You listen. But don't poke this. Don't try to crack it open. We keep quiet down here for a reason. Back me. What reason? Leon whispers. Because the hollow wants to be quiet. Tape. THREE. 0 hours 13 minutes and 44 seconds interview with Marnie. Name changed. Local librarian and folk. Me. You've compiled stories from local history. Tell me about the legend, Marnie. It's not legend. It's rotation. Me. Rotation. Marnie. Every generation, someone gets chosen. Not because they're evil. Not because they did anything wrong. They're just sensitive. Me. To what, Marnie? The sound it doesn't make. Me. You mean the creature, Marnie. It's not a creature. Arnie. It's not a creature. It's a presence. And if the hollow isn't kept silent, it gets louder. It replaces noise with loss. Me. Joni was chosen. Marnie, she stepped in. After Greeley. After he cracked. Most don't volunteer. Joni, she did. Field notes. The 16th of August, 2022. Location. Duskin Hollow, Dogman, Pathlanethy. Forest isn't like other woods. Something is missing. Not just the birds or animals, but movement. It's like the trees are waiting. I walked a stretch of path near where Joni's SUV was found. Trunk popped, keys gone, but her boots were still there, side by side in the dirt. Not thrown, not dropped, placed. Tape. 0 hours, 42 minutes, and 7 seconds interview with Danny, former deputy, retired. Me. You found her body. Danny. No, I found her eyes. Me. I don't understand. Danny. You wouldn't. You shouldn't. He lights a cigarette. Hands shake. Danny. She went into that forest to keep us safe. To stop it from waking up. But something changed this time. It didn't want a guardian. It wanted a witness. Tape 7, final recording, unknown time. This is Alexandra Vaught. I don't know what day it is anymore. I've been in Duskin Hollow for days, weeks. I don't know who's following me, but I hear them. Not footsteps, knocks. 3 at a time. Always on wood. Trees, cabin walls, even the ground if I kneel to rest. The town's empty now, or I'm the only one still awake. The dogs are here, but they won't come near me. I tried offering food. I cried. I begged. One came close enough for me to see its eyes. It looked past me, and then it whimpered "Ed," and vanished into the trees. Excerpt. Handwritten note found in Alexandra Vaught's camcorder case dated August 27, 22. Unsigned. The hollow doesn't kill you. It removes you, one sound at a time. Your name, your voice, your story, until all that's left is silence. And then you knock. I now live in Duskin Hollow. I know the path. I've walked it 3 times. The silence doesn't scare me anymore. I understand it. Joni did too. That's why she left her boots at the door. She welcomed it. Now it's my turn. My name is Clay Broderick. I was born and raised in Pike County, Kentucky, a town you won't find on most maps anymore. Bloodstone was a coal town that dried up in the 80s and rotted straight through the 90s. By the time I was 25, there were maybe 30 of us left, and by 30, I was the only one who hadn't run or died. I stayed because I was stubborn and too broke to leave. I stayed because my dad's house was all I had, and because I didn't mind the quiet, but also because of something else, something I couldn't name until much later. It was a sense that something was still watching Bloodstone, still hungry for it. There were always stories. My granddad told them with a cigarette between his fingers and a beer sweating on the porch rail. He spoke about the beast in the hollow, never called it a dog, or a man, or even a creature, just the beast. Always in a whisper, like it had ears, and always right before bedtime, when my room faced the woods. I used to think it was just old mountain superstition, just one more scary bedtime tale to keep kids from sneaking into the forest at night. But I found out the truth when I was 32, the night I followed the sound of the crying girl. It was early fall, one of those brittle October nights when the wind smells like wet leaves and chimney smoke. I'd been working on the roof of the old post office, patching in shingles, after a windstorm had rolled through. It was past 9 when I heard it, faint, but unmistakable. A child, crying, soft and choked, like they were hurt or lost. At first I thought it was a trick of the wind. Then I heard it again, closer, coming from the creek bed below town, just beyond the edge of the hollow. I grabbed my flashlight, my jacket, and my .22 rifle, and I followed the sound. I kept thinking, it's just a kid, some dumb teenager from Elkhorn maybe, screwing around or drunk off their ass. But the deeper I went into the hollow, the colder the air got. The forest grew thicker than it should have been for this time of year, and the crying never changed. No breaks, no hiccups, just one long loop, like it was on a tape. When I reached the creek, the crying stopped. I stood there, heart thumping, ears straining. The moonlight was thin, barely enough to see the water sliding over the rocks. That's when I smelled it. Wet fur, rotting meat, blood. It hit like a slap, heavy and sweet, enough to make me gag. Then I saw it, not the thing. Not yet. I saw the trees shift, not sway, shift. Like something massive had passed between them, brushing trunks aside, and I heard the sound of claws on stone, not hooves, not paws, claws, scraping slow and deliberate like it wanted me to know. It was there. I raised my rifle and aimed toward the dark, but my hands were shaking too bad to hold steady. Then something stepped into the moonlight, 20 feet away. 9 feet tall, bent legs, thick chest, fur like damp moss. Its head, a long snout, snarling lips, rows of teeth too white for something that smelled like a corpse. Its eyes glowed, not like a flashlight reflection, but from inside. We stared at each other. It didn't charge. It didn't howl. It smiled. That's what broke me. I ran. I don't remember how I made it back to the house. I don't remember unlocking the door or collapsing inside. I woke up the next morning on the floor with dried blood on my hand. I'd cut it on something. The front door was wide open, but the porch was untouched. No prints, no damage, no sign anything had been there, except for one thing. On the porch rail, where my granddad used to smoke, was a single claw mark. Long, deep, fresh. That was the start of it. Over the next few weeks, I heard it again, always after midnight. Heavy steps outside, breathing under the windows. Once, I found a dead deer on the porch. No head, just the body, drained. I boarded the windows, slept with the rifle loaded next to the bed. I called the sheriff in Elkhorn once, just to feel like I'd done something. He came by, walked around with his hand on his belt, and told me, probably coyotes, maybe a bear. You've been drinking, Clay? I hadn't. Not then, but I started after that. By December, I wasn't sleeping. The dreams were worse than the nights. Always the hollow. Always the thing watching me from the trees. Not chasing. Just waiting. I tried to record it once. I bought one of those wildlife trail cams and set it up facing the edge of the woods. I left it running for 3 nights. On the 3rd night, something tore it off the tree. Not just broken. Ripped out. Steel bracket bent. Wires pulled. The SD card was gone. After that, I stopped trying to prove anything. I just focused on surviving. Then came the snowstorm that night. The power went out at 11:37 p.m. I lit the old kerosene lamps and locked every door. Then I sat in the kitchen with the rifle across my lap. Outside, the wind howled like a choir of wolves, but underneath it, I swear to God, I heard something else. A voice, my granddad's voice, calling my name. Clay, Clay, boy, come on out, son. I nearly opened the door. My hand was on the knob when I remembered my granddad had died in 1999, buried in the town cemetery, which the county hadn't maintained since 2007. Whatever was out there knew his voice. Whatever it was, it could mimic. I backed away, heart in my throat, and sat there until morning. The sun rose. The storm passed. But in the front yard were tracks. Not boots. Not paws. Something in between, and the snow around them was melted, as if the thing had heat like a furnace. I finally decided to leave. I packed 2 bags, left a note for whoever might find it someday, and headed south on foot. Took nothing from the house but my granddad's old knife and my rifle. I walked until I found a working road. Caught a ride to Hazard. Started over. That was 6 years ago. I don't go near the woods now. I live in a city with traffic and sirens, and people on every block. But sometimes, late at night, I hear something scratching at my window, and once, just last winter, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name in block letters. Inside was a single Polaroid. A photo of the front porch in bloodstone. Fresh snow. 1 set of clawed prints, and written on the bottom, in handwriting I recognized as my granddad's. Still here, Clay, boy. My name's Elias Marks, and I used to work as a night watchman at the Clearpoint County Sanitation Facility in rural Kentucky. I was there from 2015 until 2018. Most people avoided that job. Midnight to 8 a.m., 5 nights a week, out in the middle of nowhere, all by yourself. The pay was okay, but only because nobody stuck around long. But I did. I lasted 3 years. To fight the silence, I used a small recorder. I'd talk into it, tell stories about my life, then play it back, just to hear a human voice. I never expected those tapes would one day save my life, or ruin it. For the first year, things were quiet, boring, honestly. I'd make rounds, drink bad coffee, watch deer come into the floodlights, and walk the fence once an hour. Just another night job. But then, around mid-December 2016, everything started to change. It was a little after 1 a.m. when I did my usual walk. When I got to the northeast edge of the property, where the runoff ponds meet the tree line, I heard something growling. Not like a dog, not like a big cat either. It was wrong. I pointed my flashlight, thinking maybe a coyote got close. But what I saw wasn't anything I've ever seen before. It was massive, moving low to the ground, like an animal, but something about it felt off. Its limbs were way too long, and bent in the wrong places. Its head looked like a wolf, but the fur was thick and matted like something that lived in a swamp. Then it stood up. It rose onto 2 legs, towering over the brush. Shoulders wide, arms too long, ears pointed like spears. It stared straight at me. I didn't move. Neither did it. After a few long seconds, it backed away into the woods. Not like an animal. Like smoke. Quiet. Smooth. Unnatural. I went straight back to the shack and turned on my recorder. I started rambling. I saw something tonight. Big. Looked kind of like a wolf, but walked upright. I know it sounds crazy. Then I played the recording back. Right after I said crazy, I heard a whisper. It wasn't mine. The voice whispered, "It's not." The next night, I checked the same trail. I found tracks. Massive prints, like a huge dog, sunk deep into the mud, way deeper than anything should have. When I showed my boss, he just laughed and said, "Coyotes." Another guy joked it was probably some drugged-out guy in a costume. I laughed too, pretended to believe them, but I started locking the door from the inside after that. Brought extra flashlights, left every light on, even when the sun came up, and I kept recording. A few days later, some man pulled up in a black SUV, said he was from a surveying firm, showed me a badge I didn't recognize, never smiled. He asked if I'd seen any strange animal activity. I asked what he meant by strange. He didn't like that. He walked the tree line with what looked like a Geiger counter for hours, then left without saying anything else. But after he was gone, I found a map on the break room table. It had several spots marked in red, including our site. Across the top, in bold letters, it read, "February, breach, likely." The breach came right before Valentine's Day. The lights went out. Not just the building, everything. Total blackout. The generators didn't even kick in. I locked myself in the shack. Couldn't see anything. Couldn't even hear myself breathe over how loud my heart was pounding. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Just outside. Something brushed against the shack wall. Then came scratching. I hit the record button and whispered, "If anyone hears this, I don't know what's out there. It's walking around. I think it's bang." Something slammed into the steel door. Hard. Then I heard laughter. Not normal laughter. It sounded like something trying to sound human. Like if a dog tried to copy a man's laugh. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember was the sun coming up, and the door bent inward like it had been punched. 2 nights later, they shut the place down for fumigation. Nobody told me in advance, but I stuck around, hid in the woods, and watched. 3 black vans pulled up. 6 guys in weird gear, not bug control, not even close. They went into the woods with tranquilizer guns and big body bags. They came back 3 hours later. 2 of the bags were twitching. One of them screamed. Not a person. Something else. Something that could mimic words. It howled first, then said, "Let me go." I didn't record again for weeks. Around that time, My niece Abby was staying with me. Her mom had died, and I was helping raise her. One day while cleaning, she found one of the tapes and listened to it. She didn't laugh. She started crying. She told me she'd seen something similar near her school last year, said it followed her home, said it knew her name and whispered it at night. I tried to quit that job, wrote the letter, turned in my badge. Then the fire happened. 12 acres of woods behind the facility burned overnight. No known cause. The local paper said 3 bodies were found at the perimeter fence. Called them transients, homeless, but someone leaked a photo from the coroner's office. Those weren't homeless people. It was the cleanup team. They were torn apart, limbs missing, faces eaten. My final night, I brought Abby with me. We set up cameras, motion sensors, and brought the recorder. At 2:44 a.m., something triggered the sensors. Then silence. Suddenly, the recorder turned on by itself. Click whir. A voice came through. "We are always here. You opened the gate." We walked upright before man had words. "The woods are ours," Abby screamed, out in the field. A shape stepped into the floodlight. It had to be 9 feet tall, covered in black-gray fur, hands not paws, with long claws. It lifted its snout, sniffed the air, then it spoke in a low, unnatural voice. "Run." We did. We drove until the tank was empty. That was 5 years ago. I still have the tapes, but I won't listen to them anymore, because lately, something's been outside my house. I hear it at night. It walks on 2 legs, and somehow, it knows my voice. My name's Elias Marks, and I used to work as a night watchman at the Clearpoint County Sanitation Facility in rural Kentucky. I was there from 2015 until 2018. Most people avoided that job. Midnight to 8 a.m., 5 nights a week, out in the middle of nowhere, all by yourself. The pay was okay, but only because nobody stuck around long. But I did. I lasted 3 years. To fight the silence, I used a small recorder. I'd talk into it, tell stories about my life, then play it back, just to hear a human voice. I never expected those tapes would one day save my life, or ruin it. For the first year, things were quiet, boring, honestly. I'd make rounds, drink bad coffee, watch deer come into the floodlights, and walk the fence once an hour. Just another night job. But then, around mid-December 2016, everything started to change. It was a little after 1 a.m. when I did my usual walk. When I got to the northeast edge of the property, where the runoff ponds meet the tree line, I heard something growling. Not like a dog, not like a big cat either. It was wrong. I pointed my flashlight, thinking maybe a coyote got close, but what I saw wasn't anything I've ever seen before. It was massive, moving low to the ground like an animal, but something about it felt off. Its limbs were way too long and bent in the wrong places. Its head looked like a wolf, but the fur was thick and matted like something that lived in a swamp. Then it stood up. It rose onto 2 legs, towering over the brush. Shoulders wide, arms too long, ears pointed like spears. It stared straight at me. I didn't move. Neither did it. After a few long seconds, it backed away into the woods. Not like an animal, like smoke. Quiet, smooth, unnatural. I went straight back to the shack and turned on my recorder. I started rambling. I saw something tonight. Big. Looked kind of like a wolf, but walked upright. I know it sounds crazy. Then I played the recording back. Right after I said crazy, I heard a whisper. It wasn't mine. The voice whispered, "It's not." The next night, I checked the same trail. I found tracks, massive prints, like a huge dog, sunk deep into the mud, way deeper than anything should have. When I showed my boss, he just laughed and said coyotes. Another guy joked it was probably some drugged out guy in a costume. I laughed too. pretended to believe them. But I started locking the door from the inside after that, brought extra flashlights, left every light on, even when the sun came up, and I kept recording. A few days later, some man pulled up in a black SUV, said he was from a surveying firm, showed me a badge I didn't recognize, never smiled. He asked if I'd seen any strange animal activity. I asked what he meant by strange. He didn't like that. He walked the tree line with what looked like a Geiger counter for hours, then left without saying anything else. But after he was gone, I found a map on the break room table. It had several spots marked in red, including our site. Across the top, in bold letters, it read, February, breach likely. The breach came right before Valentine's Day. The lights went out. Not just the building, everything. Total blackout. The generators didn't even kick in. I locked myself in the shack. Couldn't see anything. Couldn't even hear myself breathe, over how loud my heart was pounding then. I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Just outside. Something brushed against the shack wall. Then came scratching. I hit the record button and whispered, if anyone hears this, I don't know what's out there. It's walking around. I think it's bang. Something slammed into the steel door, hard. Then I heard laughter, not normal. Laughter. It sounded like something trying to sound human. Like if a dog tried to copy a man's laugh. I must have blacked out. Because the next thing I remember was the sun coming up and the door bent inward, like it had been punched. 2 nights later, they shut the place down for fumigation. Nobody told me in advance, but I stuck around, hid in the woods and watched. 3 black vans pulled up. 6 guys in weird gear, not bug control, not even close. They went into the woods with tranquilizer guns and big body bags. They came back 3 hours later. 2 of the bags were twitching. One of them screamed. Not a person, something else. Something that could mimic words. It howled first, then said let me go. I didn't record again for weeks. Around that time, my niece Abby was staying with me. Her mom had died, and I was helping raise her. One day while cleaning, she found one of the tapes and listened to it. She didn't laugh. She started crying. She told me she'd seen something similar near her school last year. Said it followed her home. Said it knew her name and whispered it at night. I tried to quit that job, wrote the letter, turned in my badge. Then the fire happened. 12 acres of woods behind the facility burned overnight. No known cause. The local papers said 3 bodies were found at the perimeter fence. Called them transients, homeless. But someone leaked a photo from the coroner's office. Those weren't homeless people. It was the cleanup team. They were torn apart, limbs missing, faces eaten. My final night, I brought Abby with me. We set up cameras, motion sensors, and brought the recorder. At 2:44 a.m., something triggered the sensors. Then silence. Suddenly, the recorder turned on by itself. Click. Whir. A voice came through. We are always here. You opened the gate. We walked up right before man had words. The woods are ours. Abby screamed. Out in the field, a shape stepped into the floodlight. It had to be 9 feet tall, covered in black-gray fur, hands, not paws, with long claws. It lifted its snout, sniffed the air. Then it spoke in a low, unnatural voice. Run. We did. We drove until the tank was empty. That was 5 years ago. I still have the tapes, but I won't listen to them anymore, because lately, something's been outside my house. I hear it at night. It walks on 2 legs, and somehow it knows my voice. My name's Lorraine Holt. I'm 46 now, and until a couple of years ago, I didn't believe in monsters. Granger Field belonged to my grandfather. It's 43 acres of dry Michigan farmland, tired soil, leftover corn stalks, and the kind of silence that holds old memories. After my divorce, I moved back to the family farmhouse with my teenage daughter, Abby. I thought the peace would help her, that maybe we could both start over and heal. The house was worn down, like most old farmhouses. The paint peeled, the roof sagged, and the place smelled like damp wood and forgotten things. Still, I told myself the structure was solid. I had good intentions, but there are things you shouldn't disturb, especially what's buried deep. Abby didn't take the move well. She barely spoke. She spent her days sketching strange things that looked like shadows standing in tall grass, long limbs, sharp ears, teeth that didn't belong to any animal I knew. I assumed it was just her way of processing the divorce, but the drawings kept getting more detailed. Not violent, exactly, just specific, like she was copying something real. When I finally asked her about them, she gave me this strange look and said, "They're not drawings, they're warnings." The first time I saw it, it was just after 2 a.m. I looked out my window and saw a figure near the collapsed silo. Big, broad shoulders, tall ears, a dog-like snout pointed directly toward the house. It didn't move, it just stood there. I stared, for what felt like forever, too scared to even blink. Then it turned, more like melted, into the cornfield, without a sound, like it was never really there. I tried convincing myself it was a coyote, maybe a bear, or just my tired eyes, but deep down, I knew better. And Abby had drawn that exact figure 2 weeks earlier. Then came the fawn. We found it at the edge of the field one morning, or what was left of it, torn wide open from chest to gut, the head completely gone, not eaten, just taken. I've lived in rural Michigan long enough to know what predator kills look like. This wasn't one. There were no bite marks, no signs it had been dragged, no blood trail, just the body, clean and quiet, like it had been placed there. After that, Abby wouldn't step outside. She covered all the windows with her sketches. Later that week, I was digging out back to check the septic line. That's when I found the bones, old and brittle, buried deep. Not animal bones, human. Some still had rusted buttons on them, bits of belt buckles, and 2 skulls had deep gashes across the face, like they'd been clawed. I didn't call the sheriff. Something inside told me that would only make things worse. That night, I found a note under my pillow in Abby's handwriting. It read, "Here's when we dig." I woke up to her screaming. When I ran to her room, she was curled up in the corner, shaking all over. Her window was wide open. Her drawings were scattered across the floor. I held her, tried to calm her, but she wouldn't speak. Then, from the fields, came a howl. Low, long, not like a dog, not like a wolf, something worse. It sounded smart, like it was calling for something, claiming something. The next day I boarded every window, nailed the doors shut, bought salt from the feed store, and poured it around the base of the house. I remembered my grandmother doing the same during thunderstorms. That night, the scratching started, but it wasn't on the walls or the roof, it was under the house. Abby looked up at me with a strange expression, one I didn't recognize. "You opened it," she whispered. "The ground was sealed. Now it knows we're here." I stayed awake with a shotgun in my lap. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the power went out. The whole house shifted, creaked like something heavy had stepped on it. Then I heard breathing, not outside, behind me, coming from the vent. It was wet, slow, starving. I turned and saw a pair of yellow eyes staring up at me through the slats. I couldn't scream. I just backed away and prayed. I raised the shotgun and fired, but it was already gone. I tried to call for help. The phones were dead. My truck wouldn't start. It was like the whole property was frozen in place, stuck in a moment that wouldn't end. That night, Abby sat down beside me and said something that scared me more than anything else. "Mom, we have to burn it," I asked. "The house?" "No," she said. "The field." She'd already poured gasoline along the outer edges. Said she'd seen something moving under the corn rows, shadows chasing each other. I didn't argue. I lit the match. It screamed, "Not Abby, not me." It from deep in the rows, as the flames spread. I saw it moving, fast, tall, wild, darting between the stalks like a firestorm. Then everything turned red and roaring. I saw it once through the smoke. 7 feet tall, fur black, and matted like burnt ash. Its eyes glowed like old coins, pulled from a grave. It was smiling, then it dropped onto all fours and disappeared into the fire. The fire department said it was an accident, a bad wire near the irrigation line. No one brought up the bones. No one asked about the howls. The fields were never replanted. Nothing grows there anymore. It's just dry earth and blackened stalks. Abby and I left the farm the next week, but sometimes she still draws, and just last week, I found a new one on her desk. It was the old farmhouse, and something was standing at the edge of the corn, one arm raised in a wave. Underneath, in block letters, it said, "He followed us." My name's Eli Bellows. I never used to be afraid of the woods, but I sure as hell am now. My dad, Isaac, was a real hunter. Not the kind who wore camo and went out once a season just to sit in a blind. He was the old kind, quiet, precise. He ate what he killed and could skin a deer in the dark, half drunk, humming old gospel songs. Even back in the 90s, guys like him were rare. He didn't believe in ghost stories, but he respected them. He used to say, "Don't laugh at the dark. That's when it starts listening." I always thought he meant bears, or maybe wolves, but I was wrong. This is the story of how he died, and what followed me afterward. We lived near a place called Hollowbend, West Virginia. It was barely a town, just a few houses along a road carved into the side of the mountain. We had a post office, a small church, and a bait shop with more expired food than live bait. But the forest, it went on forever. Twisted, tangled, older than anything else around. And beyond it all was a ridge called Tanner's Break. No one went up there. Even maps labeled it uncharted. Dad hunted there once a year. Only once. Said it was a tradition. That was all he ever said about it. He never took me with him, until 1999. I was 17. He told me it was time. We left before sunrise. Just the two of us, packs on our backs, rifles over our shoulders. We moved past the pines and the old logging trails. The deeper we got, the more the forest changed. Trees got bigger. Bark looked thicker. The air felt heavier. No birds, no squirrels. Nothing moved. I asked about it once. He only said, "Walk quiet." After 6 hours, we came to a clearing, white as bone, but it wasn't snow. It was ash. Dad dropped his pack like he'd been here 100 times. I noticed he was breathing differently, slower, like someone walking into church. "What happened here?" I asked. "Fire," he said. "Long time ago." I wanted to ask more. Then we heard something. Not a howl. A deep grunt, heavy, like something big, clearing its throat right behind us. I spun around with my rifle. Nothing there. Dad didn't even flinch. We camped right at the edge of that burned clearing. He didn't light a fire. Said it was a bad night for smoke. We ate jerky in silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. Branches snapped in the distance. Once, I swear, I heard footsteps. Slow, dragging, walking on 2 legs. At around 3 a.m., I saw Dad step out of the tent and walk toward the trees. He stood there, quiet, still, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. I got up and followed him, still half asleep. He turned toward me and said, "Stay here, Eli." He didn't sound scared, but he didn't sound like himself either. There was something empty in his voice. I woke up to a scream, human, sharp, real. Then something howled, deep, animal, but not any animal I've ever known. I rushed out of the tent with my flashlight and rifle. My dad was gone, but there was blood, just a little, enough to follow Dot, so I followed it. For hours, I finally found him. He was still alive, barely. His shirt was ripped to shreds. His chest was torn open. One of his arms was gone. His rifle was snapped in two like a twig. He looked at me and said something. "They always come back." Then he looked me in the eyes and whispered, "Shoot me." I couldn't. He died before I had to make that choice. I dragged his body out of Tanner's Break. It took me until the next morning. I made it back to town and collapsed in front of the church. No one asked me any questions. That's not how things work in Hollow Bend. The coroner said it was a bear attack, but I saw the bite marks. Too wide, too long, too human. Whatever killed. My dad didn't just attack him. It tore him apart, and it didn't eat him. After that, I left West Virginia, joined the Navy, tried to forget everything, and I did. For a while, until 2020, my son, Gabe, turned 17. He asked if we could go camping together, and that was when I remembered what my father said to me before he died. They always come back. We went camping in Oregon, a place I picked myself. Far from West Virginia, far from Tanner's Break. But on our second night, Gabe asked me why the forest was so quiet. I froze. He was right. We hadn't seen a single bird all day. At 2 a.m., I heard it. The grunt, deep, familiar. It shouldn't have been there. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. Something was standing at the tree line, too tall, too still. Its eyes caught the firelight, not glowing, just watching, like it knew me. We packed up before sunrise. Didn't say a word to each other. I tried to convince myself I imagined it, that it was stress, or trauma. Then, just last week, Gabe came home from school with a drawing he made in class. He said it came from a dream. It showed a creature, tall, with the head of a wolf, huge claws, broad shoulders. It was standing at the edge of a forest clearing. Below it, he'd written 3 words. "It watches me." That's when I finally accepted it. You don't hunt the Dogman, you inherit him. My dad saw it, I saw it, and now, my son has too. My name is Sean Morales. Back in 2003, I worked as a county maintenance worker in Mason Hollow, a sleepy little mountain town in southern Oregon. I was 24, fresh out of a failed college attempt, and living with my cousin Rick, who helped me get the job. It was simple work, clearing brush, maintaining fire roads, checking old infrastructure. Miller's Bridge wasn't on any official map, but locals knew it as a shortcut to the high timber line. It spanned a narrow ravine where a shallow creek ran during the spring and dried out by fall. The bridge was old, planks sun, bleached, nails rusted, and the rails warped by time. My boss, Linda, asked me to assess it for repair. Said she'd been getting complaints about strange animal signs nearby. I didn't think much of it. That is, until I found the deer, or what was left of it. It was lying by one of the support beams, flayed open, its ribcage pried apart, like a peeled banana. No scavenger does that. Coyotes rip and tear. This was methodical, almost surgical, but even weirder. Its eyes were missing. Not gouged out, but gone, sockets empty and clean. I radioed Rick, but the line crackled with static. The sun was dropping behind the hills. I should have left, but then I heard it. Not a growl, not a snarl. It was breathing deep, slow, rattling, like someone with a collapsed lung. It came from under the bridge. I leaned over the side. It was dark, but I had my flashlight. I clicked it on and aimed it into the gloom. That's when I saw them. 2 red eyes, wide apart, unblinking. They stared straight up at me. I dropped the flashlight. Whatever it was moved so fast. I barely registered the shape. A long, low body, almost reptilian, but with fur matted in places like moss. Limbs too thin to support the torso, claws, dragging. It scuttled into the drainage tunnel beneath the creek bed and vanished. I ran, back at the truck. I tried calling it in, but the radio was dead. So I drove back to town, white-knuckled the whole way. Rick believed me, or at least, he acted like he did. We drove out the next morning, just the 2 of us. The deer was gone. So was my flashlight, but in the soft mud under the bridge were tracks. 4, toed, like a dog, but far too big, and claw marks that dragged behind them, like whatever it was, crawled belly. First out we marked the bridge as unsafe and barricaded the path. Linda told us to keep quiet. She didn't want tourists poking around after ghost stories. Over the next few months, more animals went missing. Goats, a few dogs, even someone's outdoor cat colony. Always the same. No eyes, no blood. Just hollow bodies found near creeks or trails, and then people. First was Ethan Blackwell, a retired school teacher. Never came back from his evening walk. Then a couple from out of state, camping by the ravine. All that was found was a shredded tent and drag marks. Eventually, the county closed off the whole area, claimed unstable soil conditions, but locals still talk. Say something still moves through the woods, especially on foggy nights. Some say it's a mutated predator, some kind of cryptid born from forest rot and runoff. I call it the red-eyed thing. That's all I have to name it by, too. This day, I won't drive that road after dark, and if I ever hear that slow, rattling breath again, I don't think I'd survive it a second time. I've always loved hiking. The thrill of being out in the wilderness, the smell of the pine trees, the stillness that comes with being miles away from civilization. It's a feeling I can't get anywhere else. But it's funny how a love for something can change when you're forced to face the things that lurk in the shadows. This story starts on one of those trips. I went hiking in the Cascades alone. I had taken the same route many times before. A few days in the mountains, alone. With my thoughts, the quiet beauty of nature. It was supposed to be a relaxing trip. I've always been cautious about hiking alone, but this was a familiar trail. It was one of the safer routes in the area, known for its breathtaking views and lack of dangerous wildlife. That's why I didn't think twice when I set out that morning. The first day went as planned, nothing out of the ordinary. I set up camp by a small stream and spent the afternoon fishing, enjoying the peace. That night, I sat by the fire, listening to the crackling wood and the distant calls of coyotes. But as the darkness settled in, something felt off. It started with the wind. I've hiked in the mountains long enough to know that the wind can change course unexpectedly, but this felt different. It wasn't a natural breeze. It felt heavy, oppressive, like it was pushing against me. I could hear the branches above swaying, but it didn't sound like the wind was moving through them. It sounded like something was moving through them. I shrugged it off at first. Just my imagination, I told myself. But when the wind shifted, it brought a low growl with it. It was so faint I almost thought I imagined it. But I stopped, frozen in place, and waited. There it was again. A growl, a deep, guttural sound, almost like a warning. It didn't sound like a bear, not like any animal I'd ever heard before. I turned toward the sound, but saw nothing in the dark. Just the outline of trees, their trunks heavy with shadow. The moonlight barely filtered through the canopy, leaving me with little to go on. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it. "It's nothing," I muttered, and added more wood to the fire. But the growl wasn't the only thing that lingered in the air. I felt something else, an undeniable presence, something watching me from just beyond the firelight. My skin prickled with the sensation that I wasn't alone. I tried to ignore it, wrapping myself in my sleeping bag and closing my eyes. But sleep wouldn't come. The sounds of the forest were too loud, too alive, and the growling, it didn't stop. It came and went, rising in volume and intensity, circling the camp as though something was pacing just out of reach. I stayed awake until the first light of morning, too terrified to close my eyes. By the time the sun rose, I decided I couldn't stay another night. But my decision wasn't just about fear. It was the overwhelming sense that something was waiting for me. I packed up quickly and began the hike back down the mountain, but as I retraced my steps, the forest felt different. The trees seemed to close in around me, their towering trunks pressing in on all sides. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the underbrush made my heart skip a beat. And then, I heard it again, the growl. Closer this time. I stopped dead in my tracks. The air felt thicker, the silence that followed, oppressive. I stood there, listening, waiting, but the forest offered no answers. No animals stirred, no breeze moved through the leaves. It was as if the world itself had gone quiet, leaving only the low growl to echo through the trees. I turned to look around, my heart hammering in my chest, and then, there it was. A figure, tall, hulking, standing just beyond the trees, barely visible in the shadows. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't a man, it was something other. The way it moved, the way it stood, was wrong. Too large, too broad, its shape too distorted for any creature I knew. I couldn't move. My feet were frozen to the ground, my body refusing to react. All I could do was watch as it stepped forward, slowly and deliberately, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The growl became a rumble, deep in its chest, reverberating through the trees. My instinct was to run, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from it. And that's when I realized, this thing, whatever it was, had been following me. It wasn't just a random encounter. It had been waiting for me to make a mistake. It took another step forward. The air was thick with tension, the forest alive with the sound of my pulse in my ears. Finally, I managed to move. My legs were shaky, my body screaming to flee, but I forced myself to turn and run. I don't know how long I ran. My mind was too clouded with fear to count the distance, but I didn't stop. I just kept pushing through the trees, stumbling over rocks, branches slapping my face as I moved. Somehow, I made it to the trailhead. I didn't stop until I was in my car, the engine roaring to life beneath me. The wilderness stretched out before me, silent and still. I drove as fast as I could, not looking back once, but even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the growl, still feel the weight of that presence watching me from the pines. It's not a memory I can shake. I've been back to those mountains since, but I'll never forget what I saw. Something was out there, waiting, watching, and it wasn't finished with me. The forest has a way of keeping its secrets, but sometimes, it lets them out. It started on a weekend trip to a cabin my wife, Sarah, and I rented in the Cascade Mountains. We had been planning it for months, just a quiet retreat to get away from work and the chaos of city life. We'd rented a small remote cabin nestled in the pines, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by untouched wilderness, the kind of place where you can hear every little noise, every snap of a twig, every gust of wind. The cabin itself was charming, wooden, old but well maintained, with a fireplace, a huge window overlooking the trees, and no phone service, exactly what we wanted. After unpacking and getting settled, we spent the first evening cooking dinner, reading, and enjoying the peace. But by the second night, things started to change. We were sitting by the fire, sipping wine, when we first heard it, a rustling sound just outside the cabin. It was subtle at first, like a breeze moving through the branches, but it quickly became louder, more deliberate. I assumed it was a deer, or maybe a raccoon getting too close to the cabin. But then, it stopped, completely. I glanced at Sarah, and she looked at me, the same confused expression on her face. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I replied, standing up. "I'll go check." I grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside. The night was cold, and the forest felt alive, almost too alive. The trees swayed gently in the wind, but the air was unnervingly still. There was no sound, no insects, no owls, just silence. I scanned the trees, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The shadows in the forest seemed to move with the light, but I saw nothing. Probably just a raccoon. I muttered to myself, heading back inside, but as I was about to shut the door, I heard something, heavy breathing. Not just the sound of a creature in the woods, but a deep, guttural inhalation, like something, or someone was waiting. I froze. The sound came from just beyond the tree line. I hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. Sarah was staring at me, her face pale. "What is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I said, trying to calm myself down. Maybe just a bear or something. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. That night, we didn't sleep much. I kept hearing faint sounds, footsteps, distant calls, that same heavy breathing. But every time I'd get up to check, the cabin was empty. There was no sign of anything. No tracks, no movement, just the oppressive silence of the forest pressing in around us. The next morning we decided to go for a hike to clear our heads. We walked through the woods, the morning sun filtering through the trees. It was peaceful, and for a moment, I almost forgot the strange events of the night before. But then we came across something that changed everything. A set of footprints. They were massive, easily 1.5 feet long, and they were so deep in the mud that they almost looked as though they had been left by something much heavier than a person. The shape wasn't quite human though. The toes were too wide, too elongated, and the heels too large. They didn't look like any animal tracks I knew. I knelt down to examine them, and that's when I felt it. The sensation that we were not alone. I looked up, scanning the trees. Nothing, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my stomach twisted with a feeling of dread. "Let's head back," I said to Sarah, trying to keep my voice steady. Now, we turned around, but as we walked back toward the cabin, I noticed something else. Movement in the trees, just beyond our line of sight. Something tall and dark, shifting between the trunks. It wasn't a person. It wasn't an animal. It was too big, too wide. I couldn't make out any details. Just the shape of something enormous. Watching us, we hurried back to the cabin, and for the rest of the day, we stayed inside. The windows locked, the blinds drawn. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the thing we had seen earlier was getting closer. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind, set my nerves on edge. Around midnight, I heard it again. Footsteps. But this time, they were right outside the window. Heavy, slow, like something was pacing the cabin, watching us. I grabbed the rifle we had brought with us, though I knew it wouldn't help if whatever was out there wanted to get in. And then, a voice died low, muffled, like it was coming from the other side of the glass. It wasn't a word, just a guttural growl. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. I stood completely still, barely breathing. Sarah was awake now, clutching the blanket to her chest, her eyes wide with fear. And then, it happened. The window, next to me, right next to my shoulder, shuddered, as if something had slammed into it from the outside. I jumped back, my heart in my throat. The growl came again, louder this time, almost snarling. I couldn't take it anymore. We grabbed our bags, ran out the door, and didn't look back. We sprinted through the trees, my mind racing, my legs burning, until we reached the truck. Didn't care about anything else. We just had to get out of there. I don't know what was out there in the forest that night, but I do know it wasn't anything natural. The size of it, the growls, the way it moved. This wasn't a bear, a cougar, or anything I've ever heard of. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, and for just a second, I thought I saw something tall and dark standing at the edge of the clearing, watching us. We haven't been back to that cabin, and I don't think we ever will. I don't know what it was, but I know this much. The forest doesn't always want to let you leave. I can barely remember what life was like before we found that game on a June night. We were 6 high school kids, bored out of our minds, trying to fill the time. Most of us had summer jobs, but we were saving for college, so we didn't want to spend much money. After hours of debating what to do, we decided to take a walk around our suburban neighborhood. It was the end of a yard sale day, and most people were packing up. A few were still outside, eager to sell the last of their stuff. We didn't plan to buy anything, but I always liked to look around, hoping to find a hidden treasure. Even though I usually regretted my purchases later, I started digging through a shoebox full of old board games, hoping to find one we could play together. Since it was the end of the day, I figured I could get it cheap. At first, I only found games that were either in terrible shape or ones I knew my friends wouldn't want to play. I'm a huge board game fan, but my friends, not so much. It took me months to convince them to play D&D for my birthday, and that was a one-time thing. I was always searching for a game they might actually enjoy. I was about to give up when I noticed a game at the bottom I'd never seen before. Tasks with Friends. The tagline read, "The game you and your friends will never want to put down." The box was colorful, but worn, like it had been played many times. It looked old, but not so damaged that we couldn't use it. I tried to open it, but the sides were taped down, which made sense. No one wants game pieces flying everywhere. There wasn't a price on it, so I went to find the owner. "Excuse me, how much for this game?" I asked, excited by my find. "Oh, that old thing. I don't know. Do you have $1 on you?" she said, barely looking at me as she packed up her unsold items. I started digging through my purse, but before I could find anything, she waved her hand. "Just take it," she said, going back to her packing. I couldn't help but ask, "Is the game any fun?" She shrugged. "I never played it. My friend Jen gave it to me a few years ago because her kids got obsessed with it. She wanted it out of her house, but my family never got around to playing it." I thanked her and called my friends over to show them what I found. When they saw it was a board game, their excitement faded quickly. They rolled their eyes, knowing I was going to try to get them to play it with me. "Kate, you know we don't do board games," Aaron said, already annoyed. "Come on, guys. You've all been complaining about how bored you are. At least give it a try. It looks like fun, and none of us have played it before, so we can all learn together," I said, hoping to spark their curiosity. James came over and gestured for the box. I handed it to him, knowing if he got on board, everyone else would follow. As he examined the box, I watched his expression change from doubt to interest. "Damn, this actually looks fun. Let's go play," he said, sounding more excited than I'd ever heard him before. He started jogging toward his house, with me right behind him, and the rest of the group trailing behind, looking confused. James was usually the one most against. playing board games, so his sudden enthusiasm was surprising. We got to James' house and walked inside, where his mom gave us a confused look. She wasn't used to seeing her son so excited about anything. Before we could explain, we heard James calling us from the basement. We ran downstairs to find the game already set up on the floor. James was sitting on a pillow, reading the instructions with intense focus. "James, are we really going to play this?" Bree wind. "Yes, we are. I promise. Once you start playing, you'll have fun. I had time to learn the rules while you guys were coming over," James said as he shuffled a pile of cards. After some back and forth, everyone eventually sat down. James began to explain the rules straight from the instruction manual. At first, we all laughed it off, thinking the game was just getting creative. "That's wild," Aaron said, chuckling. "How'd the game know you were working today?" He raised an eyebrow at AJ, but none of us were really concerned. The game was fun, and no one wanted to stop playing. We continued on, diving deeper into the cards, each more intriguing than the last. As time went on, the tasks got stranger. A card I drew instructed me to steal something from another player without getting caught. It was labeled as a secret task, and I immediately felt a jolt of adrenaline. I had to swipe something. Subtle but noticeable enough for me to call attention to it later, without anyone catching me in the act. During the next few rounds, I saw my chance. Aja's phone was sitting next to her, slightly out of reach, but she was too focused on her task to notice me. While James was explaining the rules of his new public card, I slid her phone into my hoodie pocket. No one saw. My heart pounded in my chest as I forced myself to sit still and act normal. 2 rounds later, when it was my turn again, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Task completed," I announced, moving my token 3 spaces forward. AJ checked her pockets for her phone and gasped. "Wait, did you take my phone?" she asked in disbelief, and when I revealed it, we all burst into laughter. But as the hours ticked by, the game slowly started to take a darker turn. It wasn't obvious at first. More cards started referencing personal details about us, things the game shouldn't have known. Aaron drew a secret card that required him to text his ex-girlfriend something embarrassing without getting caught. He seemed hesitant at first, but he did it. When the notification popped up on his phone, a few minutes later, we all screamed with laughter. James drew a public card that said, "Break something valuable in the house." We thought it was funny until he picked up a family photo frame and smashed it without hesitation. His mother's face in the photo looked so sad as the glass cracked across it. None of us said anything, but it felt like we had crossed an invisible line. Henry drew a card that instructed him to lock the front door and don't let anyone leave until the game is over. It was a secret task, so when he quietly stood up and did it, we didn't notice right away. It wasn't until much later, when Aaron tried to leave for a quick break, that we realized we were locked in. We all laughed nervously, thinking it was just Henry being funny, but when I saw the look on his face, I knew something was off. He shrugged, saying, "Hey, it was my card. I can't lose, right?" That's when Bree drew her next card. She hesitated, looking down at it for a long time, before reading it out loud. "Public card, tell the group your darkest secret." The room fell silent. Bree was always the strong, stoic one in the group, never showing vulnerability. We all waited, expecting her to say something silly or brush it off, but her face turned pale. "I can't. I don't want to," she whispered. James egged her. Come on. It's just a game. We all know it's not that serious." But Bree shook her head. "No, you don't understand. This secret, it could ruin everything." We sat in stunned silence, watching her fidget with the card. Her hand trembled as she placed it on the ground, staring at it like it was a loaded gun. Suddenly, AJ spoke up, her voice shaky. "Guys, maybe we should stop playing." But it was too late. The game had us in its grip. Henry drew his next card, a secret task again. and I noticed his hands were shaking too. His eyes darted between us, as if he was suddenly afraid. Out, I said, standing up. This game is getting too weird. No, wait. Aaron grabbed my arm. We can't just quit. The rules. What if something bad happens if we stop now? I scoffed. It's just a game. A stupid game. We can stop whenever we want. But Henry's voice came out in a low whisper. We can't. I froze. What do you mean, we can't? I tried, he muttered, his eyes wide with fear. When you guys went to the bathroom earlier, I tried to stop. I tried to put the cards back in the box, but it wouldn't let me. What are you talking about? I demanded, my stomach churning. The box had closed itself. Henry's voice cracked, and he glanced at the game with terror in his eyes. We're not in control anymore. Number 1 moved. The weight of his words hung in the air, and for the first time that night, I felt genuinely afraid. Ajay's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She jumped, checking her screen. It's my manager. He says, if I don't come to work, I'm fired. We stared at her, speechless. What do we do? Bree asked, her voice shaking now. We can't just keep playing. But, as if in response, the deck shuffled itself. Cards began to lift from the top, slowly floating into the air before dropping back down, ready for the next player. The game wasn't over, and it wouldn't stop until it had what it wanted, and I wasn't sure if that was just a finish, or if it was something much worse. The air in the old treehouse was thick with anticipation as the next game began. Despite the musty smell and dim light, none of us seemed to care. We were like zombies, drawn back to this cursed game, and although we didn't admit it, we knew something was deeply wrong. But the pull was too strong, like a drug we couldn't resist. Bree was the first to draw her card. It was a public one, and she read it aloud with shaky hands. Do a handstand for as long as you can. Every second equals 1 space. The group cheered her on half-heartedly, but the excitement we once felt was starting to wane. Even the easy laughs and cheers didn't have the same spark as before. Bree gave a weak smile and attempted the handstand, failing miserably. It was obvious she wasn't focused. After a few seconds, she fell over onto the creaky floorboards, collapsing into a fit of nervous giggles. James smirked, pulling his card. Next, a secret one. He didn't even try to hide the glee on his face as he read it. Guys, I have a secret task, he said, trying to suppress a grin. We all watched him intently, eyes wide, waiting for him to make his move. But Aaron cut in, grabbing his card. Let's keep it moving. It's getting late. He flipped his card and groaned. It was another public one. Sing twinkle, twinkle, little star, but replace every word with a rhyme, he muttered. Normally, we would have found it hilarious, but now it just felt forced. Aaron half-heartedly sang the ridiculous version of the song, his voice barely audible. No one was laughing anymore. Task complete, he sighed, moving his token forward on the board, but it felt like a formality at this point. Then came Ajay's turn. She pulled the secret card, and we all stiffened, wondering what it would be. She read it silently, her expression blank, but there was something about the way her face tightened that made me uneasy. Henry leaned forward, staring at her intently. What is it? He asked, his voice low. She didn't respond. Instead, she just nodded and tucked the card into her pocket, her eyes darting from one person to another. The tension in the treehouse thickened. My turn was next, and I hesitated, my hand trembling as I reached for the deck. I knew whatever card I drew would push me deeper into this madness, but I couldn't stop myself. The pull of the game was too strong. It was a public card. Walk to the edge of the forest and scream for 30 seconds. I read aloud. Everyone exchanged uneasy glances. The treehouse was deep enough in the woods that the nearest house was far off, but something about the task felt wrong. The forest seemed darker now, more sinister. "I'll do it," I muttered, standing up. As I climbed down the ladder and made my way to the edge of the clearing, I felt my heartbeat quicken. The moonlight barely lit the trees, and the air felt heavy, like the forest was watching me. I opened my mouth and screamed into the night, my voice echoing through the trees. It should have felt cathartic, but instead, it felt like I was waking something up, disturbing something that had been slumbering for far too long. When I came back to the treehouse, everyone was sitting in a tense silence. No one asked me if I completed the task. It didn't matter anymore. The game wasn't about fun, and it wasn't about winning. It was about the control it had over us. The next few turns were a blur. People pulled cards, completed tasks, and moved tokens, but none of it registered. My mind was focused on how everything had changed. The cards were manipulating us, pitting us against each other, making us hurt the people we cared about most. James suddenly stood up, his face pale. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the secret card he had drawn earlier. His hands were shaking, and he threw it onto the board, his voice trembling as he spoke. My card said, "To push someone off the ladder." The group froze. "James, what the hell are you talking about?" Aaron asked, his voice incredulous. James looked at us, fear in his eyes. I didn't want to do it, but the card said I had to, or I would lose the game. Bree's face twisted in horror. "You were going to push someone off the ladder. Are you insane?" "I didn't. I couldn't. But don't you get it? This game is. It's controlling us. It's making us do things we don't want to do." A cold shiver ran down my spine. We all stared at the board, the tokens scattered across it like pieces in a sick game of chess. The realization hit us all at once. We weren't playing the game anymore. The game was playing us. AJ suddenly stood up, throwing her secret card to the ground. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I don't care about the points or the tasks, or anything. This isn't fun. It's not a game. It's..." She was cut off by a loud, cracking sound, followed by a thud as one of the wooden boards beneath her snapped. She fell to the floor, clutching her leg in pain. The rest of us rushed to help her, but as we did, I glanced down at the board. The cards were still there, waiting, and I realized something terrifying. We had never drawn the last card. The deck was endless. No matter how many games we played, there would always be another card, another task, another twisted challenge designed to pull us deeper into the nightmare. The treehouse was silent now, except for a jay's soft whimpers of pain. I looked around at my friends, Bree, Henry, Aaron, James, and saw the same fear in their eyes. We needed to stop. We needed to get rid of the game, burn it, bury it, anything to break free from its grip. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was too late. The game had already won, and we were its players forever. James looked at Aaron in shock, his voice trembling. What was your card?" Aaron's lips quivered as he slowly opened his fist, revealing the blood-soaked card. None of us dared to look too closely, but the single phrase printed in bold black letters made my heart stop. "Kill someone for 30 spaces." The air felt thick, suffocating. No one spoke, but the horror was palpable. We stared at Aaron, at the blood on his hands, the weight of what he'd done sinking in. James began to shake, stepping back as if distancing himself from the reality of it all. Who did you, Aaron dropped his head, his voice barely a whisper. "My mom. I didn't want to, but I had to. The game, it made me do it." A cold shiver ran down my spine. The game wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly. And now, it had claimed a life. As much as I wanted to feel something, rage, sadness, disgust, all I could focus on was the growing urge inside me to complete my own task. My ankle throbbed in pain, but the craving to keep playing was stronger. I couldn't stop thinking about James' pinky finger. I needed those 10 points. But Aaron, he looked destroyed, hollowed out by his own actions. His blank stare fixed on the game board as if it was the only thing holding him together. "We have to stop this," Bree said, her voice shaky. "We have to walk away, right now." For a moment, I saw the slightest flicker of hope. Maybe we could. Maybe we could stop. Maybe we could put the game down, leave, and never return. But Aaron, broken as he was, shook his head slowly. "We can't stop. The game won't let us." And he was right. Every inch of me was screaming to keep playing. The pull was undeniable, like the game had wormed its way into my mind, my very soul. Before I could even think, AJ reached for her card. My heart raced. This was it, her secret card, the one that had something to do with me. She didn't even hesitate. With cold precision, she grabbed a jagged rock from the barn floor and, without a word, smashed it against my already broken ankle. The pain was beyond anything I had ever felt. I screamed in agony, thrashing as the sharp, blinding sensation shot through my leg. And then I noticed it. She moved her token. She earned points for it. It hit me then. We weren't just hurting each other for the sake of the game. We were feeding off each other, gaining points like a sick reward. The deeper the pain, the more powerful the pull. It was the game's sick way of making sure none of us ever wanted to stop. "We have to finish this round," Henry said, his voice distant, as if he was no longer fully present. James, still shaken from what Aaron had done, slowly reached for his card, his hands trembling as he flipped it over. His face went pale. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, staring at the card in disbelief. Whatever it was bad. But I didn't get to find out what it said. Not right away. Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps outside the barn. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. My heart raced as we all froze. Who could it be? Were the police here again? Had someone found out about Aaron's mom? The barn door creaked open. In the dim light, I saw a shadow step through. It was an older man, someone I didn't recognize. His face was calm, almost serene, as he walked straight to the game board, ignoring the blood, the broken bodies, the horror around him. He knelt down beside it and looked up at us. "I see you've been playing my game," he said quietly, his voice deep and unsettling. For a moment, none of us knew what to say, but Aaron spoke first, his voice trembling. "Your game?" The man nodded, smiling softly. "I created it a long time ago. It's been passed down through generations, finding its way to those who are ... worthy. Bree whispered in horror, her face pale. The man looked at her with pity, as if she were a lost child. "It's not about winning or losing. You see, it's about survival. About embracing the game, understanding it. Those who finish, they become part of something greater. I spat, wincing as the pain in my ankle flared again. "This is madness. It's killing us." The man chuckled softly, standing up and dusting off his pants. "It's not about killing. It's about sacrifice, commitment. The game chooses its players carefully. We don't want to play anymore," James blurted out, his voice desperate. The man's smile faded. He looked at James with cold, piercing eyes. "But you already have. And now, there's only one way out." He pointed to the game board, and we all followed his gaze. There, right in the center of the board, was a single word we hadn't noticed before. "Finish." The man stepped back, folding his arms. "The game won't let you go until you do." Panic set in. I felt the walls closing in. There was no escape. No matter how badly we wanted to stop, we were trapped. Bound to the game, James looked at us, his face pale. "So what do we do?" The man smiled again, that same unsettling calm washing over his face. "You keep playing." And so, we did. Because we had no choice. It was the last game we ever played. Tell me what you did right now. What the hell does your card say? Show us, James shouted, standing up in a rage. His voice boomed through the barn, echoing against the walls as the chaos mounted. Just as James was about to lunge at Aaron, Henry suddenly reached into his pocket, pulling out a matchbox we had used for campfires during our days on the run. We all froze, our eyes locked on Henry as he struck 3 matches and tossed them into the nearest hay bales. Instantly, the dry straw caught fire, flames spreading rapidly across the barn floor. Way without wasting a second, saw her chance. She stomped on my already damaged ankle with all her might. A sharp, sickening crack filled the air as my foot twisted grotesquely to the side. I bit back a scream, the pain beyond anything I had ever felt. And as if that wasn't enough, she slammed her foot onto my other ankle, leaving me completely immobilized. She moved her token 12 spaces, and despite the agony, I felt an overwhelming high surge through me, the satisfaction of the game taking over every rational thought in the midst of the madness. Aaron's hand slipped, and his card fell to the floor. James immediately dropped to his knees, grabbing the card with trembling hands. As he read the words aloud, his voice cracked with disbelief and fury. Secret card. Kill James' mom. Move 30 spaces. Tears welled in James' eyes as his anger boiled over. You did this for a stupid game. How could you kill my mom? Aaron's face was pale, his voice pleading, desperate. I didn't have a choice, James. You know what it's like. I couldn't control it. The game, ... It made me. But James had reached his breaking point. His face twisted in a mix of rage and heartbreak. It's too late for that, he muttered, barely above a whisper. Then, with a primal roar, James threw himself at Aaron, his hands locking around Aaron's throat, squeezing with all his strength. Aaron thrashed under him, gasping for air, but James was beyond reason. The game's hold on him had snapped, replaced by pure, unfiltered hate. I could barely process what was happening as the fire grew hotter and higher, spreading through the barn with terrifying speed. In a horrifying blur, AJ pulled a pocket knife from her jacket and stabbed Bree in the stomach. Bree let out a choked gasp, clutching her wound as the two of them tumbled to the floor. Locked in a deadly struggle, I lay on the ground, helpless, my body wrecked by the damage to my ankles. The searing pain was overwhelming, but the chaos around me was even worse. I glanced across the barn and saw Henry sitting in silence, watching it all unfold. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw nothing but emptiness in his gaze. He reached for a card, even though it wasn't his turn. He didn't care anymore. I knew I had to escape. The fire was out of control, and if I didn't get out soon, I'd burn along with the rest of them. With a desperate grunt, I began dragging myself toward the barn door, ignoring the fire that now licked at my heels. I was barely able to move, but inch by inch, I pulled myself through the dirt. The game board clutched tightly in my hands. I glanced back one last time as I neared the exit. The barn was ablaze, flames roaring around the wooden beams. I saw Henry one last time. He wasn't trying to escape. Instead, he calmly placed his card on the board. Through the thick smoke, I managed to read it. Secret card, let the fire overtake. You move your token to the finish line and win the game. Henry didn't scream or struggle as the fire consumed him. He just stood there, motionless, accepting his fate as the flames engulfed him. With a final surge of strength, I dragged myself out of the barn just as it collapsed in a torrent of fire and debris. I was out, barely, but I still had the game. As I lay on the ground, staring at the burning wreckage of the barn, I looked down at the game board in my hands, and despite everything, despite the death and destruction, all I could think about was one thing: who would I play with now? I tried to start a new game, alone. I picked a card, but before I could even read it, I heard sirens in the distance. Police cars and fire trucks pulled up next to me. Paramedics rushed over, trying to pull me away from the game. I screamed and fought them, my mind consumed by a single thought. I needed to play. I needed the game. It was my only purpose. They sedated me eventually, and I woke up in a hospital bed. They told me I was the only one who had survived that night. My friends, the barn, everything was gone. My parents sat by my side, tears in their eyes, but I didn't care about any of it. I only cared about the game. I was declared insane and spared any punishment for what had happened. Our families had enough influence to cover everything up. The deaths, the fires, even James' mother's disappearance. But none of it mattered to me. The only thing that mattered was the game. And when they told me the game was gone, destroyed in the fire, something inside me broke. I lashed out at the doctors, the nurses, anyone who tried to come near me. The withdrawals were unbearable. I screamed for days, my mind unraveling without the game to feed my addiction. Eventually, I was sent to a psychiatric hospital. They kept me drugged, but even through the haze of medication, I could feel the craving deep in my bones. I thought about the game every second, every hour. My body itched with the need to play. After months of pretending to get better, they finally sent me home. I had learned how to hide my obsession, how to mask the madness inside me. My room had been stripped of anything dangerous. No sharp objects, no shelves, no windows without bars. They even put a lock on the door to keep me in. I sat on my bed, feeling hollow and empty. But as I looked around my barren room, something caught my eye. A flash of color at the back of my closet. My heart skipped a beat. I crawled over, my hands trembling as I reached into the darkness. And there it was, the game. The beautiful, colorful box, waiting for me. I tore it open, a wave of euphoria flooding through me. The paper cut from the box didn't even faze me. I sat down, ready to play once more. And that's when I drew my first card. Secret card. Spread the word about this game online so more people can join us. Move 20 spaces. So what do you say? Care to join me for a game? I grew up in a small town in northern Idaho, a place where the nearest neighbor was miles away, and the nearest grocery store was a half-hour drive. Our house sat on the edge of a dense forest, one that stretched for miles in every direction. We were used to the sounds of wildlife, owls hooting, deer rustling through the underbrush, the occasional bear or cougar. But something about that forest always made me uneasy. I didn't realize how much until that summer. It was the summer after my senior year of high school. My friend Liam and I decided to camp out in the woods for a few days, just to get away from everything. Liam was the adventurous type, the one who'd always talk me into doing stupid things. But this time, I was eager to escape the town. The pressure of college applications and family drama had been building up, and I thought, a few days away from it all would clear my head. We left on a Thursday afternoon, loaded up our gear, and hiked a few miles into the forest to set up camp. The spot we chose was perfect, secluded, quiet, near a creek with plenty of shade. We spent the day fishing, laughing, and cooking over the fire. It was a good time, just like the old days. As night fell, the temperature dropped. We sat by the fire, telling stories, trying to scare each other. Liam kept talking about the wild stories he'd heard about people vanishing in the woods, but I wasn't buying it. Still, there was something about the air that felt thicker, like the trees were closing in around us. It wasn't until later that night that I heard it, a rustling in the trees. At first, I thought it was just a deer, but then it happened again, closer this time. I stood up, squinting into the darkness, trying to make out any movement. Liam was still talking, oblivious to the fact that something wasn't right. Then, I heard it, a sharp snap of a branch. Whatever it was big. I glanced at Liam. Did you hear that? He stopped mid-sentence, his face going pale. He didn't need to answer. I could see it in his eyes. He heard it too. We sat there, motionless, staring into the darkness. The rustling grew louder, closer. It wasn't just one animal. It was something moving deliberately through the trees, making no effort to hide its presence. Then, a deep, low grunt echoed from somewhere in the distance. It was not the sound of any animal I knew. I grabbed the flashlight, shining it into the woods, but I saw nothing. The fog from the creek had rolled in, thick and heavy, making it impossible to see more than a few feet in front of me. The sound stopped. Then, we heard something else, a voice, or at least, it sounded like a voice. It was low, guttural, barely a whisper, but we both heard it. It wasn't human, not even close. Go away. The words were clear enough, but the voice was something that didn't belong. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could see Liam was just as scared as I was. But neither of us moved. And then, we saw it, a shadow, just outside the circle of light, cast by the fire. Something massive, standing upright, on two legs, its outline distorted by the fog. It was tall, taller than any man should be, easily 8 feet. The figure was covered in dark fur, but it didn't move like an animal. It was deliberate, watching us. The air seemed to thicken around it. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't look away, even though every part of me screamed to run, and then it stepped forward. Just enough for the light to catch its eyes. They were yellow. Not the reflective kind you get from an animal's eyes in the dark, but something unnatural. The eyes were almost human, but too wide, too predatory. I couldn't breathe. Liam finally snapped out of it. He grabbed my arm and yanked me back. "Run," he screamed. We both bolted toward the creek, not looking back. The forest seemed to shift around us as we ran, the trees closing in like they were trying to trap us. I stumbled twice, the weight of the fear dragging me down. We made it back to the campsite and grabbed what we could, our backpacks, the tent, the cooking gear, and we didn't stop until we hit the truck. We left everything behind. The drive back was a blur. We didn't speak a word to each other. We just kept our eyes on the road, watching the rearview mirror, as if expecting something to follow us. I don't know what we saw that night, but I know it wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man. Whatever it was something older, something that had been watching us from the shadows for far longer than we could understand. We never went back, and as I sit here now, years later, I can still feel the weight of its eyes on me. It's the kind of thing that doesn't let go. That forest, those trees, they hold secrets, and they're not willing to share them. Some things in the woods aren't meant to be found. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip, just me and my brother, Mark. We'd gone to the same spot every summer since we were kids, an old, secluded campground just outside of Olympic National Park in Washington State. No cell service, no distractions, just hiking, fishing, and the peace that comes from being miles away from the world. But that year, 2018, it was different. I don't know why. Something felt off from the moment we arrived. We set up our tents and unpacked around mid-afternoon. The weather had been perfect for days, but as soon as we hit the woods, the air seemed heavier, colder. Mark didn't notice it at first. He was too busy setting up the fire pit, cracking jokes like usual. I, on the other hand, couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched by dusk. The fog rolled in, thick and silent. It smothered the trail, blurred the trees, and made the familiar woods feel foreign. The silence felt wrong, too. No rustling, leaves, no birds, no insects buzzing. just the quiet hum of the world holding its breath. Mark didn't seem bothered, but I couldn't stop looking into the fog, waiting for something to move. That night, around midnight, I woke up to the sound of something scratching outside the tent. Not wind, not branches. This was sharp, deliberate, like claws against fabric. I tensed, waiting for it to stop, but it didn't. Instead, it got louder, closer. I shook Mark awake. His eyes were groggy, but I could see the shift in him as soon as he heard it too. We both listened, trying to make sense of the sound. Then it stopped. Just like that. The silence was worse than the noise. I grabbed the flashlight and we unzipped the tent cautiously. Outside, the fog swallowed everything. We couldn't see more than a few feet in front of us, but we heard it, movement in the distance. Like something walking, heavy footsteps crunching through the underbrush. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't a deer. This was something bigger, Mark muttered. It's probably a moose. Let's just go back to sleep. But I couldn't. I felt it. The weight of something huge and close. I could almost feel the air move as it passed. Mark didn't understand. He never did. The next day, we went hiking as planned, trying to shake off the unease from the night before. The fog had lifted by morning, but the forest felt different. The trees were denser, more oppressive, and the ground seemed to sink beneath our feet as we hiked deeper into the forest. Mark noticed something strange. Tracks. Large, deep impressions in the mud, like someone, or something, had walked through the woods without concern for the ground beneath it. The tracks were huge, easily 20 inches long, and the spacing between them suggested a massive stride. Probably a bear, Mark said, though his voice had lost some of its certainty. I wasn't so sure. I'd seen enough wildlife to know what a bear track looked like. This wasn't that. But we pressed on. As the day wore on, we came to a clearing with a small creek running through it. We decided to stop and have lunch, and for the first time since we'd arrived, I felt like I could breathe again. The air seemed warmer, and the sunlight broke through the canopy above us, casting a peaceful glow over the water. But then I saw them, eyes not far off, barely visible through the trees on the opposite bank. A set of dark, gleaming eyes, reflecting the sunlight like a predator waiting for its moment. I froze. Mark noticed, following my gaze, but he didn't see it at first. Then, the eyes blinked, slowly, and that's when Mark saw it too. Jesus, he whispered, his voice barely audible. What the hell is that? We both watched as the eyes moved, not in a natural way, but almost deliberately, like they were studying us. And then, they disappeared behind a thick cluster of trees. I don't know what made me do it, but I grabbed the rifle we'd brought with us. We need to leave, now, I told Mark. We didn't even bother packing up our things. We just grabbed what we could and started hiking back to camp. But the fog came back. This time, it rolled in faster, thicker, faster than I'd ever seen it move. The air got colder again, and I could hear it, something walking behind us, just beyond the fog. Keeping pace with us, we pushed forward, the trail now a blur, the ground turning soft and treacherous beneath our feet. Every now and then, I heard a branch snap, a footfall crunch, but I didn't turn around. It wasn't until we reached the clearing near camp that I heard it again. The growl, low, rumbling. It vibrated through my bones. Mark and I sprinted the last 100 yards back to the camp. The fire had gone out. The tents were still there, but everything felt off. I didn't sleep that night. Mark did, but I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear those heavy footsteps, the sound of something circling us, keeping its distance, but never leaving. The next morning, we packed up without saying much. Neither of us mentioned what happened. Neither of us wanted to. We left the woods and never went back. I tried to tell myself it was just an animal, maybe a bear or a cougar, but those eyes, the way they moved, that feeling of being hunted. Somewhere in those woods, Something watched us that day, and I don't think it was a creature from this world. I wasn't always the kind of man who believed in stories. Not ghosts, not creatures, and definitely not Bigfoot. But what happened in Black Hollow made me question everything I ever thought was impossible. It was 2016 when my cousin Cody invited me to go night fishing with him near a secluded stretch of water deep in the hills of West Virginia, a place called Black Hollow Lake. It wasn't on any map, not really. Just a runoff pond at the bottom of a steep ravine, surrounded by state forest. Locals say don't fish there after dark, he said, grinning like it was a dare. They say it screams at night. I laughed, thought he was full of it. But I was going through a rough patch. Divorce, job gone. So the idea of beers by a quiet lake didn't sound so bad. We left around 5 p.m., took his old Tacoma through winding back roads, then hiked the rest of the way down a deer path. It was dusk when we got to the lake. Fog sat heavy on the water like a blanket. The trees leaned in, gnarled and close, like they were trying to listen. We set up by a half-rotten dock someone had built long ago. The water barely moved. No frogs, no crickets, just the sound of our lures hitting the surface and the occasional crack of a branch somewhere. Behind us, around 9:30 p.m., the temperature dropped, fast. I remember that sudden chill like it slapped me. Then we heard it, a scream, not a woman, not an animal, something else. It came from across the lake, up on the ridge, long and hollow, like a person screaming through a tunnel, but deeper, more primal. It echoed, vibrated through my chest, like bass from a concert. Cody went dead quiet. That's it, he whispered. That's the thing they talk about. I tried to laugh it off. Probably a fox or bobcat. No, he cut me off. You've never heard this before. Just wait. A few minutes later, it screamed again. Closer this time. We packed up, fast. The trail back out was steep. Roots and rocks everywhere. Our flashlights barely cut through the trees. That's when we heard branches cracking, off to the side. Something big was moving, pacing us, not fast, not hiding, just keeping pace. We stopped, and it stopped. I turned, shined the flashlight into the trees, and for a split second, I swear to God, I saw it. Tall, hunched, covered in dark, wet-looking hair, eyes reflecting yellow in the light, like an animal. But it wasn't afraid of us. It stood there like it knew we couldn't do anything. Then, it screamed again, right there on the trail, and I dropped the flashlight. We ran, stumbled, fell, got cut up on briars and branches. Cody twisted his ankle, but we didn't stop. I don't remember how we made it to the truck. I just remember slamming the door and locking it like that would actually help. We sat there in silence, both of us too shaken to speak. Then we heard it again, the scream, farther now. Moving off into the trees, when we finally got out of there, it was nearly 2 a.m. Cody never went back, sold the truck a month later, moved to Georgia. I kept thinking maybe it was a bear with mange, some injured animal. But the screams, those didn't belong to anything that should exist in these woods. I went back once, during the day, found the dock again, though it had mostly sunk, and on a tree, just above the shoreline, I saw it. 3 long claw marks, fresh, deep. There are places in this country where stories aren't just stories. They're warnings. Black Hollow is one of them. And if you hear the scream, don't stop. Don't look. Just go.